On that note, let's go ahead and get started. So thank you guys all so much for coming. I'm really glad to start doing video stuff again. For those of you who have been following along for a while, I used to do a lot of live broadcasts and stuff, but once I started getting busy with the book and all these other things, I just sort of let that fall to the wayside a little bit. But I definitely want to start ramping back up with video content and back up with live content, and because I think it's the best medium for me to help really to what I want to focus on this year in particular. So for those of you, I'm assuming most of you know me pretty well at this point, but just in case you don't, I am, as you know, last year I put out a book, Foodist, and I'm really proud of it. I think it's a great manual for somebody to get healthy who hasn't been healthy yet. And in particular, if you've tried a lot of dieting or other sort of weight loss strategies or other healthy eating strategies that required a lot of restriction and that were really difficult, I think that Foodist was what I created as a tool for you guys to, do what I've done basically and change your life from a very difficult relationship with health and food to a really wonderful one that you love and that you can feel proud of, and that gives you the ability to achieve everything you've always wanted to achieve without sacrifice and suffering and all the stuff that makes dieting suck. So I did that last year, and I'm really happy with how it turned out, but I wanted to take a step back this year and ask what more I could do for you guys to help get you to where you want to be. And for instance, like a book is great, but it's printed words and it's not very interactive, and it's not the most fun medium on earth. And we have this amazing internet with all these amazing tools at our disposal. And so I am trying to take a step back and think, how can I help people get healthy even more than just what I've written in the book and written at Summer Tomato? So, and if you guys have any trouble viewing, go ahead and leave comments in there. I'm going to go pop over one more time and leave one more link. Okay. Boom. So basically, I have been asking very actively all my readers on the site, and particularly my newsletter subscribers. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed to the Summer Tomato newsletter, you definitely should. I have tons of interactions with people there, and it's much more engaging than just what you get on the blog. And it's not the same as the blog post that I mail out through the RSS. It's a more interactive, dynamic community. And for those of you who have been on the newsletter for a while know, I've been asking you a lot what more I can do to help. And that's what this is about today. And so I just wanted to read you some of the feedback I've gotten from readers. So, obviously, there's been amazing, tremendous success stories from both Foodist and Summer Tomato, and I get the most amazing, heartwarming emails from people who've lost 60 pounds and their kids love kale, and it's really wonderful. But I know that there's a big group of people that like the message and really want to make all these changes and transform their lives, but haven't quite figured it out yet. And so I've been trying to get to the bottom of that for many of you. And obviously, everybody's different. Everybody has their own unique problems. But I just wanted to share something that I got from an email I sent out a few months ago asking people what was the one thing they really think is holding them back from achieving the health style and the goals that they have in terms of how they eat, how they look, how they exercise, and all those things together. And I got this email from a reader named Susie, and she said, and it really struck me what she says here. She says, "What's holding me back? I have no idea. I know that my weight is dangerous. I know I need to practice healthier habits more consistently, and yet I cannot seem to motivate myself to get beyond the siren call of the couch and the refrigerator." And that's totally something I hear all the time. I hear it echoed, versions of this echoed by readers all the time. And I think and like these are the sorts of problems I want to help you guys get past. So, I mean, I've given you lots of tools, I've given you lots of strategies, but you know, if you can't get started, then we're all sort of like just sitting and doing nothing in the mud, stuck in the mud. So, but I think we can all relate to this kind of feeling, the feeling of being overwhelmed by a problem. So, for instance, like I, for one, used to feel this way, in particular about like my finances. Like I was a student and I was paying tuition and I didn't have a lot of money, and you know, I had some credit card debt, and I would just sort of, it would build, and it would, you know, I was so scared of it because I didn't know how to tackle it that I would just ignore it and hope that one day it would sort of figure itself out, which of course is like a horrible strategy. But you know, it's very understandable when you're overwhelmed and you don't know where to start and you don't know what to do. And you know, other people, you know, I've seen people with like a specific closet in their house that they just sort of shove things into and like slam the door, and like it's just one of those problems that seems like such a big issue that you can't help but just want to like turn your back and ignore it. So I think this is really, really common. I've talked to, you know, hundreds of people who experience this sort of paralysis in what we do, because it's true. Like when we are faced with situations like these that are overwhelming, we all do exactly the same thing. We all do the same thing. We ignore it and we do nothing. We do absolutely nothing. And so that's what I want to help you get past. So there are, like I mentioned, I think there are two key skills you need to get over this feeling, to get past something that's stopping you when you really, 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 really want to be on the other side. You really want to get past it and, you know, achieve all these goals, but it's just too much, and you don't know where to start, and you're overwhelmed. And so the first thing is just acknowledging that that's what the problem is. You know, it's not that you can't do these things. It's that you, this health is a really big problem, right? Like it's not just there's one thing you can do and then you'll be healthy. It's like, you know, it's food, it's shopping, it's cooking, it's exercise, it's socializing, it's all these different things, you know, and when you put them all together, it just feels like this, it feels like you have to overhaul your entire life, and you're already busy and you're already exhausted, and that just sounds impossible, right? And so we get paralyzed with these feelings because we're so overwhelmed and we don't know what to do. The other issue, and I think this one's really important, is that when you haven't dealt with a serious problem, like your health or your finances or something like that, there's this, that accompanies the fact that you've been ignoring it and letting it build up for a while, is a sense of guilt and shame, right? The feeling that you're really embarrassed because you feel like you should have like handled this already, like you should have, you know, gotten control of this, since it's, you know how important it is, you know how important health is, right? You know it's at stake here, but when you haven't done anything and you know you should have been, it's really, really easy to just feel shame and guilt. And what that does is it actually withdraws you even more, right? So it's one more thing that's preventing you from acting, because when you're covered in shame and guilt and overwhelm, like no one can move in that situation. You know, you just get, you get frozen. And so today we're going to talk about getting past those two things. So is everybody still hearing me okay? Looks like, I'm going to try, let's see how, can't see myself. Oh yeah, there's lots of you. Good, sweet. All right. So today I'm going to talk about the first, well, right now I'm going to talk about the first thing, the first step in overcoming this. And the most important thing you need to do first and foremost is ditch the guilt. So first we're going to talk about the guilt problem, because it is a huge problem. And shoot, sorry, my view keeps disappearing. Okay. So we're going to talk about the guilt, because until you get rid of that, like nothing's going to change. So basically what happens is when you feel guilt and when you feel embarrassed or shamed, you it creates a sort of, anxiety around your actions. And this puts you in a very defensive state of mind. Sorry, I lost my view again. And when you're feeling defensive, okay, shit. Okay, there we go, back on track. All right, and when you feel defensive, basically what that does is it puts you in, you feel defensive, and you get into like a fight or flight mode, right? Like when you feel like you're being attacked, or you're criticizing yourself, or you feel like you would be criticized by others, you're feeling attacked. And when you're in that mode, I mean, by evolution, what happens in your brain is it puts you in a more impulsive state of mind, right? Like your brain, it actually goes out of its way to shut down the sort of the part of your brain that allows more strategic planning and allows you to sort of think before you act. Because, you know, if you're being chased by a tiger on the Serengeti or something, you don't have time to think like that. And it's actually a beneficial evolutionarily to have the reflexive part of your brain shut down when you're in defense mode. So that's one of the reasons that guilt and shame and embarrassment from the fact that you haven't done anything about it is so dangerous. Because what happens is you get scared, you go into defensive mode, and instead of doing what you need to do, which is step back and analyze your situation logically and make the best move, you curl up and you go into your comfort mode, you go into your impulse mode, and your impulse is going to go eat junk food or sit on the couch or, you know, do something that makes you feel comfortable instead of makes you feeling embarrassed and scared and ashamed. So we need to get past that. And the way to get past that is going to sound probably a little counterintuitive at first, but hear me out, and I think it'll make a big difference. The way to get past it is with self-compassion. And what I mean by that is, instead of thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, I didn't work out today, I really wanted to work out this week, or I didn't cook dinner, I ordered takeout instead of judging yourself and being mad at yourself and disliking yourself for failing, which is basically what you're accusing yourself of doing, you need to exhibit some self-compassion and say, you know what? I didn't do what I wanted to do, and that's a bummer. But that doesn't make you a bad person, and it doesn't mean you can't change. It doesn't mean you're useless or not able to achieve anything. It just means you are using the wrong strategy, right? It just means that you haven't quite figured out yet how to get to, you know, how to go at the green light. So, but that is exactly the mindset you need to have if you do want to get past it. Because if you're feeling shame and guilt and you shut down and you go hide in a tub of ice cream, like, that's not doing anybody any good, right? So the most important thing you can do, and I know what you want to do is you feel like you want to judge yourself, right? You feel like, gosh, I just need to be more disciplined and, you know, try harder and be harder on myself, set up, you know, negative consequences for myself if I don't do the right thing. That doesn't work. A much better strategy is to be self-compassionate, understand that no one's perfect, that these things are figure-outable, that you can do this, and, you know, instead of judging yourself, step back and think, what went wrong? You know, what went wrong? Like, why didn't I do it this time? Was I too tired? Did I not have the right tools? Did I not plan for, you know, an obstacle that in retrospect was somewhat predictable? So you need to step back and ask what you can do. But you can only do that if you shed the guilt, shed the shame, and demonstrate some self-compassion to yourself. And one thing that can be really, really powerful, think of it this way. Let's say your kid or your best friend or your mom or somebody came to you and said, gosh, you know, I'm such a loser. I can't believe I didn't do this. You know, I don't think I'll ever succeed. Like, you know, your kids say, I don't think I'll ever make the baseball team. I'm just no good. You know, what would you say to that person? Would you say, you're right, buck up, you know, work harder? No, you'd sit them down and you'd tell them, it's okay, let's figure this out together, right? And that's what you need to do to yourself. and say, you know, it's okay that you didn't get it right the first time, but let's figure this out. Okay, so that is step one for getting past that feeling of being guilty and being overwhelmed. So, and without ditching the guilt and without nurturing some self-compassion, and I know it's hard to do, but you have to like practice it and nurture it. And if you can get there, then you can finally get to a place where you can actually start talking or dealing with your habits, right? You're actually in strategy mode instead of in defense mode. So that's key. All right. So the next step is understanding that one of the reasons that you feel overwhelmed by your health in general and why it's so hard for everybody to get a grasp on like how to fix this problem is that health is not one thing, right? It feels like one big thing, but it's not. It's actually a bunch of tiny little small things, right? It's eating vegetables, it's eating less processed food, it's learning how to identify healthy food, it's learning how to cook healthy food, it's learning how to eat slowly and mindfully and not be triggered all the time to eat more than you need or foods you don't want. And then there's exercise. There's a lot of tiny little things that go into making health. But what happens is when you haven't done any of them, you look at this problem and you think, oh my gosh, in order to make a dent in this, I have to do something massive. I have to overhaul my life. I have to completely change my diet. I have to, start working out like 3, 4, 5 days a week to get this under control. But that is actually an illusion. The vast majority of the time, the problem is not the size of the problem. The problem is that you have done absolutely nothing at all to make a dent in it, to reduce it. And the biggest problem you're actually facing isn't the size of the problem, but just getting started, just starting to make, put one foot in front of the other and take the steps needed to get where you want to be. And this might sound really simple, but it's actually really profound. And the way you tackle it when you realize that this isn't, that really your goal shouldn't be to completely overhaul your life. Your goal should be to just simply start, do something. Suddenly, instead of being an impossible task, it's a manageable task. And that alone is like such a relief. It's like it helps so much in your resolve and how you feel about yourself. It sort of goes back to that guilt thing. It takes a lot of that guilt off because you can say to yourself, well, I just need to do one thing. I don't have to do everything. So the secret is to start small. So this is skill number 2. And this isn't just a health lesson. I'd say this is a life lesson. I don't know I'm sure everybody has somebody in their life that is just like crazy, insane productive. Like they're doing 1,000 things at once with somehow the same number of hours in the day that you have. And somehow they can just like demolish everything all the time. The secret that those people know is that every big problem is a bunch of little problems, and they just break things down into little manageable tasks and just check them off their list one at a time. And when you approach a big problem that way, you don't at first feel like you're making a lot of progress, but then 1 week goes by, 2 weeks go by, a month goes by, and you look back and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe I've made so much progress. And all you really did was just start. So that is an incredibly powerful method, and I'm going to give you some more specific examples of how to actually do that today. So, but first I wanted to take a minute and just stop and reflect for a second and ask you to think about what it means if you don't do this at all, right? So like, I'm telling you it's easy to start small and that you should just do that, but like the reason that's so important is because the alternative isn't like you're going to magically one day wake up and like overhaul your life, right? Like we can like pretend that's going to be true, but it's not. And if you do nothing at all, the consequences of your health are very severe. I mean, and it can be really scary. And I know that's one of the reasons that it's so hard to act. But, the best time, if you haven't started already, like the best time to start is today, right? Like don't put it off. Just do one thing and then build on your success. And before you know it, you'll have overhauled your health and you'll wonder how you ever had the willpower and how you ever mustered up the strength to do it, but you'll do it. All right, so that's the gist of it. I need you to don't think about this as a huge project. Think about a bunch of small projects and what you can do to start today. So, like we said, health is an array of different habits, right? There's a lot going on there. So, just get rid of the idea right now that you need to do all of them at once. Pick one thing. Pick one thing that you're highly, highly motivated to do. And what I mean by that is, like, if you let's say you just like really don't like vegetables or something. Don't start there. You don't have to start there. Start with exercise. Start with something else. Start with mindful eating. Start with something that seems easy to you and something that you're really motivated to do because you either enjoy it or you can see it's like you have a good understanding of what the value is. Because that's where your motivation is going to come from, right? Is something that that's where the momentum to act is going to come from that motivation. So pick something easy, pick something fun, pick something you really, really, really want, and start there. And then once you've like found something, so for instance, like a lot of people today, when I asked you guys what you were stuck on, like a ton of people said exercise. Like a lot of people haven't been able to figure out how to get exercise into their lives. So the next step, once you've chosen a habit to start, ask yourself what is really, really stopping you. What's actually stopping you? So, not having time is not what I mean. I want you to get really, really specific. So, well, I didn't have time because I stayed really late at work and I was exhausted. So if that's the case, you were exhausted, maybe you should try to work out in the morning instead of in the evening. And this is the power of when you stop feeling guilty and ashamed that you haven't done anything and have self-compassion and look at your health more as like something you're like troubleshooting and problem solving, more objective like a scientist, then you can start testing these different theories. You're like, okay, well, maybe if I'm, you can start testing why, whatever's stopping you, you can ask yourself, is that really stopping me? What can I do to prevent that? Make some adjustments and see if that works. It might not, but that's how you go about tackling this stuff. So let me just get into a few of these examples or a few of the questions that I got from you guys about specific ways that these techniques can help you get past that thing you're stuck on. So the first one I got is from Jackie, and she says, you might not be a she, but Jackie says, I'm a foodie, and I'm convinced that the movement component would motivate me to make healthy food choices. So she's talking about exercise. Especially if I could get my exercise routine to happen in the morning so as to set me up for a healthy mindset for the remainder of the day. Now, like I said, I got tons of questions about exercise. So I think Jackie's question is fantastic, and I think it's really exemplary, and that's why I picked it. But let's dissect it a little further. So first off, like Jackie said, the morning is a great time to start an exercise habit. There's lots of reasons for that. But one of the biggest reasons for that is that very few things can derail you in the morning. Exercise, in my experience, is one of those things that is very, very easy to put on the chopping block, right? When life gets crazy, when you start getting calls and your boss starts freaking out and your kids, have a bloody nose at school and you have to go pick them up, the first thing on the chopping block is exercise. So if you can get it in the morning, you sort of eliminate all those questionable variables that can derail you. And also, when you wake up in the morning, you're fresh, right? Like even if something specific doesn't derail you time-wise in terms of your workout during the day, if you're just exhausted or you're hungry after work or when you're drained, it's going to be really hard to find exercise or find the motivation to go burn more calories and drain your blood sugar even more. So the morning's fantastic if that works for you. So there's a couple things that can prohibit you from working out in the morning. One is that you already have a morning routine. You already have a morning habit. And so, and when you wake up, you're kind of, I say you're fresh, but you're not quite fresh first. It takes a minute to get fresh. And, but we tend to be cold. We don't want to get cold. So we tend to not want to put on shorts and go outside. So that's a potential barrier that you could have for working out in the morning. So one way you could get around that is to lay out warm clothes or your workout clothes right next to your bed before you go to bed, so that when you wake up in the morning, all you have to do, don't think I have to go run 3 miles. Just think, I just have to put these pants on. I just have to put these shoes on. And that is suddenly a much more manageable task than, I need to work out 5 days a week every morning. That's overwhelming. Putting on your workout pants and being warm and putting on your shoes and being like, you know what? Maybe I could go do a little exercise right now. Another thing you can do is, or another reason that can sometimes make working out in the morning a little difficult, is if you haven't gotten enough sleep. So if you haven't gotten enough sleep, you actually won't be refreshed in the morning, and you actually won't have enough energy to exercise. So if that's the case, then you have to focus on what's stopping you the night before, what's keeping you up so late that you're not getting enough sleep. So think about your evening routine and what you can do there to improve the likelihood that you'll actually get up in the morning and do your workout. Now, if you just don't like working out in general, which is totally normal, like only freaks like working out naturally. But for the most part, none of us is born with an innate desire to go to the gym every day. But what happens is, as you get more fit and as you become more accustomed to exercise in your life, then it starts to become awesome. Then it starts to making you feel good, and then you have that intrinsic motivation that those crazy people at the gym that love it, that's what they have. They've come to a certain level of fitness, they've come to a certain level of routine that you become, I know I am, definitely you become dependent on your workouts. Like I go completely crazy if I haven't got my workout in. And, no matter how stressful my life was, when I was getting married, when I was finishing up my book and I had a tight deadline, like I didn't cut my workout out of any of those times, because that would just make my brain explode. I have trouble focusing if I don't get my workout in. So that is what you have to look forward to if you can get your exercise routine going. But if you're not there yet, it can be really hard to get motivated. So what I recommend for starting to work out is, if you have no experience with exercise at all, is to do these little small things that get you closer toward starting to exercise, but are still building the habit. So what I mean by that is, for instance, let's say you get up, you put on your workout clothes, and you put on your shoes, and you just walk around the block once. Right? Like this isn't requiring you to, sweat a lot. It's not requiring you to feel uncomfortable in the gym or in your body, and it'll help you get into the mindset of doing something physical in the morning without it being totally overwhelming. Anybody can find 2 minutes to put on their workout clothes and walk around the block before work. Anybody can do that. So that's a great place to start. If you for some reason don't like going outside, or you never wanted to start walking, you want to start doing more strength training or something, you can have small habits that are more inside. For instance, just wake up and do 3 sit-ups, just 3. Don't be like, I have to do 100 sit-ups every morning. That's too much. No, you can't do that, so you won't do it, and so you'll fail. We don't want that. We want to just give you a sense of success. We want to build the habit of getting up and doing something. So get up and do 3 sit-ups. And see how that feels. And what happens is when you start small like that, you build into your life the triggers and rewards that we talk about in terms of habit building, right? And that is the key, right? That's the key to habits. You can expand the activity at any time. Maybe one day you're like, I'll go to extra block today, or maybe I'll run instead of walk around the block today. But what's more important than what you actually do, is that you build the habit and that you build the reward. And, for the reward, it might not sound rewarding, but you can do little things to make the habit you're building, no matter how small, make it rewarding. Even just like smiling or, you know, like patting yourself on the back. For instance, I'm trying to get a new habit started in my house where we don't throw our laundry on the bathroom floor before our showers and leave it there for a week. So I told my husband, we were both trying to, the reward that we're giving ourselves now is to pick up the clothes and slam dunk them into the hamper, because it like feels really good to like slam dunk, and that creates something of a reward. And we're not perfect yet, you know, we're not doing it every time yet, but it's such an easy goal, you know, just walking around the block or slam dunking your clothes, that you can do it every day, right? So if you miss one day, just pick it up where you left off the next day and try then, until the habit becomes a routine. And then, like I said, you can build from there. You can expand the middle. You can, you know, do a full workout. You can, you know, get on your FitStar app and do a full 7-minute workout or something like that, or do kettlebell swings or whatever, until, you know, who knows? I started working out that way, and one day I was running marathons. I would have never in a million years thought I was going to run a marathon. And when I first started running, I could only make it like a couple of blocks. And I don't run marathons anymore, but that's the power of just telling yourself, I'm just going to do as much as I can, but just do it consistently. Okay, so that's a huge one, and that's an example of how you can start small and use tiny habits to start an exercise routine. So let's move on to the next one. So this email I got was from Rose, and she had a long history of what she was struggling with, and I just took a snippet out for simplifying. But let me just read what I have here. So she says, I have looked up so many recipes, but can't seem to get motivated to start. It's really hard to be motivated when your husband isn't really on board anymore, once he saw how drastic the changes had to be. And I feel like a terrible mom either way I go. So I like Rose's problem. Well, I don't like Rose's problem. I'm sorry, Rose. But I'm using this example because I think it's very, very telling of the type of place a lot of us come from. So what I'm hearing from Rose is that she has actually two different motivations, right? One motivation is to be a good mom, to feed her family right, and to keep her children healthy. The other thing the other problem is she wants to also keep her children happy. She wants to be a good mom in the sense that she wants her family to appreciate what she's doing, and she doesn't want dinner and health to be a struggle. And those are like tough, right? Those butt up against each other really hard. So and what we're dealing with here is not just her, right? Like Rose clearly wants to eat better, but the issue is that her family doesn't necessarily see it the way she does, and doesn't feel about it the same way she does. And so not only is she overwhelmed, but her family is also overwhelmed. And so that's like a double whammy. And I could easily predict what happens here, right? Nothing. You're paralyzed because you don't want the fight. You don't know where to start. So my advice for a situation like this is to just give up the idea of overhauling the diet completely. I know that's your goal. Like, it sounds like the goal, but you can't do that overnight. It'll be hard on you. It'll be hard on your family. It'll be a tough sell. You're right to think that is a little bit too difficult. Instead, what I want you to do is just start with one vegetable. Even in a week, it doesn't have to be one a day yet. Just start with one vegetable in a week, and just add it. Make sure it's really, really tasty. It doesn't need to be a complicated recipe. It doesn't need to be fancy. Just one simple, really delicious recipe for a vegetable. And then don't touch the rest of dinner. Continue whatever else you're feeding them, but just add something new and show them that it doesn't have to be all that bad. And I think if you don't know where to start, the roasted cauliflower recipe I have on Summer Tomato, I actually finally had one person that was like, it was just okay. But for the most part, everyone loves it. It's super simple, and it's a great place to start. And if if you can present, as like, yeah, I just threw that on there, this vegetable that everybody really likes, and like, oh, you know what, it's not that bad. Then you can start there and build from there. And maybe they won't notice that one day pasta sort of stops appearing as often, and you're seeing rice a lot more on the plate, or beans a lot more on the plate. Do it gradually so that neither you are suffering nor your family is suffering. And then the only requirement is that it is really, really tasty, right? So look for simple recipes, not hard ones. Don't look for full meals. Just a simple vegetable recipe that's really delicious. All of them are ranked pretty much. So look for good reviews, and just start there. Start small, and build from there. Build as you go, and it won't seem so overwhelming for you or your family. It does get easier. Okay, so one more, and this one is from Anne. So Anne wants to eat more healthy prepared meals at home instead of quick, easy takeout options. The reason I struggle with this, she says, is that when I'm hungry, I just want to eat something that tastes good quickly. I don't seem to plan out my shopping with what I want to make during the week, so I'm always short on ingredients, and it takes time to make good meals, including the cleanup. So this was another one that I saw a lot of people saying that convenience was their barrier. Like, it felt that cooking and healthy meals just feel like so much work. And so they, when they're tired and when they're hungry, they default back to the convenience things they've always eaten. And this is absolutely normal, absolutely predictable, and something you can deal with. So, I mean, she says right in here that basically poor planning is resulting in poor choices. And so my advice to Anne is to, again, start small. So what I'm hearing from you is that you don't have an arsenal of easy, simple, delicious home court recipes that you can rely on to get yummy food in your face without much work when you need it. And so that's what you need to work on developing, is those home court recipes. And that's, I definitely went through this same thing when I started cooking, because I didn't know how to cook. I didn't particularly enjoy cooking. And when you're starving, a burrito just sounds like the answer to all of your prayers. Whereas I'm like, gosh, you don't want a salad. You don't want to like make a salad and then eat a salad. That sounds super unsatisfying. And so you default to the comfort food, to the easy food. So, there's a couple ways to tackle the home court recipes you need to create. So first of all, they need to be satisfying, right? Because one of the reasons a salad doesn't sound good is because a lot of the time salad lacks protein or enough fat or things in it that make it feel like a substantial meal. And no one will choose like an unsubstantial salad versus something tasty like a burrito down the street if you're really hungry and your will is weak. So so you have to start by making sure that it's something substantial that you're eating. So I default a lot of the time for things like eggs. Eggs are really satisfying, really easy to cook. They're pretty much tasty no matter how you cook them. And so that's a great place to start. This is one of the reasons that if you've read Foodist, I talk a lot about batch cooking. And one of the reasons batch cooking is so valuable is that it gives you a default substantial thing that's already cooked and already in your fridge. So for instance, on Sunday nights, I will make a big batch of beans or a big batch of lentils, or I'll roast something like a chicken or a pork shoulder or something, so that I have a huge thing of protein in my fridge, which is now suddenly easier than a burrito. Like a burrito's out the door, like that's work. Now I have this thing in my fridge. Then once you have that base, it takes just a couple minutes to dice up some broccoli or dice up some cauliflower or zucchini or kale or something, put it in a pan with some garlic, olive oil, salt, and pepper, and you add the protein, and then suddenly you have a delicious, satisfying meal that's homemade, that took you hardly any time, because the cooking the protein is always what takes the longest amount of time, and is faster than takeout. So I mean, it might not be that simple if you're feeding a family as opposed to just yourself, but that was what I had to go through in order to realize that I needed many different dishes like this to prevent myself from having, these sort of like willpower breakdowns from when I was starving and hadn't planned well. So you need an arsenal of home court recipes. Another thing you can do is be a little bit more proactive about your snacks. So you will always make bad decisions if you're starving. Like always, almost always. It's really hard to make a good decision when you're starving. So I rely often on we'll get these little bundles of like sunflower seeds, or like little packs of like, tiny little servings of like some cashews or almonds, and eat those, chew them thoroughly, drink some water before you get to starving, and that will give you a bridge in order to make that right decision to actually make dinner instead of going and get takeout. So if you're you can't let yourself get starving like that. So there's 2 steps to this planning. One is to just start developing home court recipes. So start with 1. Like I said, if you go on a Summer Tomato, I have lists and lists and lists of things you can try, but I imagine that's really not your problem. You don't lack resources. You just haven't narrowed in on one that you can start with, and build from there. And 2, plan a little bit better. Have something so that you don't have to make these decisions when you're starving. So those 2 small things can get you to a place where you're capable of making a good decision at dinner time. Does that make sense? Sweet. So yeah, so the idea is to start small. Pick one recipe that's substantial. You can check Summer Tomato, and you will have, and you might want to start earlier in the week, because by Thursday, Friday, you're going to be a little worn out. So next week, pick a recipe, plan it out, make it on Monday or Tuesday night, and see if it's really that bad. And then you have that one. So then the next week, do that one again and try adding a different one, or maybe not immediately the next week, maybe build up a few one at a time, and then before you know it, all you need is half a dozen or so. Sweet. So we're wrapping up on time here. So thank you guys so much for joining. Just a quick wrap up here. We all want the same thing, right? Like, you want to build a shiny, happy, wonderful health style that makes you look good and feel good, and that you can be proud of, and that doesn't result in suffering and struggling. But, when you haven't started yet, when you haven't yet addressed any of these things, you feel overwhelmed, and then you feel guilty for it, and then you become completely paralyzed and you do nothing. And so the message for you guys that I want you to really take home today is the most important thing you can do is first ditch the feelings of guilt and start being self-compassionate and looking at these problems as something that can be solved, because they can. And then start by taking a very, very small step in the right direction, and just work to build those little tiny habits that will ultimately develop into much bigger, more impactful things. But that will never, ever happen if you don't at least start. So get started, do something small, and and always remember that it's possible, right? Like, other people have done it. Like, hundreds of people have read my book, read Foodist, read Summer Tomato, and have made these changes. So it's not bad that you haven't yet. You can figure it out, and it just comes down to sort of being objective, not judging yourself if you haven't figured it out yet, and just saying, you know what, I can figure this out. What's really stopping me? Let's dig in and get to it, and try until it works. Cool. Awesome. So thank you guys so much for joining. This was fun. I'm going to be doing more of these, I hope. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And if you could all do me a favor, and if you go into the comments either on the blog or here in Google+, if you could just leave me a little feedback, let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, you know, whether or not I need a haircut, whatever. And that's it. So thank you guys so much for joining, and peace out.